Amara had always believed in love, the kind of love that healed wounds and brightened even the darkest days. When she married Chaik, her heart brimmed with hope. He was charming, attentive, and full of promises. Yet, beneath his golden smile lay a tempest she couldn't foresee. Their early days together were filled with laughter, dreams of the future, and whispered sweet nothings. But as time passed, cracks began to form in their seemingly perfect facade. It started with subtle criticisms: her cooking, her appearance, her inability to conceive a child. Chaik's frustration festered like an open wound, and his words became sharper, cutting her confidence piece by piece. Amara tried to adapt, to make things right, believing that love required sacrifice. But when the verbal barbs turned into slaps, the nights became her most dreaded hours. By day, Amara wore a brave smile, concealing the bruises on her arms and the sorrow in her heart. Her neighbors praised her resilience, calling her the perfect wife, unaware of the torment she endured behind closed doors. She convinced herself that Chaik's anger was temporary, a result of stress, and that her love could change him. But deep inside, doubt gnawed at her soul, whispering truths she wasn't ready to face. Their small, modest home bore witness to the escalating turmoil. The creaking wooden floors and thin walls absorbed the sounds of Chaik's rage and Amara's muffled sobs. The once cozy living room, adorned with wedding photos and cheerful memories, now felt like a prison. Amara found solace in small moments: a blooming hibiscus in their garden or the gentle coo of a bird outside her window. Yet, these fleeting joys couldn't shield her from the storm that brewed each night. As the days turned into weeks, Amara's determination solidified. She started to quietly plan her escape, saving small amounts of money from the grocery budget and hiding them in a hollowed-out book. Though her fear of Chaik remained, her resolve to break free grew stronger with each passing night. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. Amara's opportunity to confide in someone came unexpectedly. During a rare trip to the local market, she bumped into Nkechi, an old friend from her university days. Nkechi immediately noticed the tiredness in Amara's eyes and the guarded way she spoke. Sensing something was amiss, she pressed gently, asking if everything was all right. At first, Amara hesitated. The weight of her secrets felt unbearable, and she feared Chaik's wrath if he ever discovered her betrayal. But as Nkechi persisted, her kindness and concern broke through Amara's defenses. In hushed tones, amidst the bustle of the market, Amara began to share fragments of her story. She didn't reveal everything, but it was enough for Nkechi to understand the gravity of her situation. "Amara, you don't have to face this alone," Nkechi whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "There are people who can help. You deserve to be safe." Nkechi's words planted a seed of hope in Amara's heart. Though she was terrified of the consequences, she agreed to stay in touch and promised to reach out if things worsened. Nkechi gave her a slip of paper with a phone number for a local women's shelter and hugged her tightly before they parted ways. That night, as Amara hid the paper in her secret book, she felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in years. The road ahead was uncertain, but she knew she wasn't entirely alone. With each whispered plea and silent prayer, Amara edged closer to the courage she needed to break free from the darkness that had consumed her life. Chaik began to notice subtle changes in Amara's demeanor. She no longer flinched as much when he raised his voice, and there was a quiet determination in her eyes that hadn't been there before. He dismissed it at first, attributing it to her usual resilience. But as the days passed, his suspicions grew. Amara, meanwhile, continued to prepare for her eventual escape. She practiced masking her emotions, knowing that any sign of defiance could provoke Chaik's wrath. At night, she would replay Nkechi's words in her mind, drawing strength from the promise of safety and freedom. Her secret stash of money grew slowly but steadily, hidden in the hollowed-out book she guarded fiercely. One evening, during dinner, Chaik's mood darkened without warning. He accused Amara of being distant and ungrateful, his words laced with venom. Amara, determined not to provoke him further, remained calm and quietly apologized. But her composure only seemed to fuel his anger. He slammed his fist on the table, making the plates clatter, and stormed out of the room. As Amara cleaned up the shattered glass from the floor, she felt a surge of resolve. She knew her time was running out. Chaik's volatility was escalating, and she couldn't afford to wait much longer. That night, as she lay in bed, she whispered a silent prayer for courage. The cracks in Chaik's armor were growing, and she was determined to find a way through them to reclaim her life. The days that followed were marked by an uneasy silence. Chaik, though still unpredictable, seemed to retreat into his own thoughts. Amara suspected he was grappling with his own demons, but her sympathy had long been eroded by fear and pain. She focused instead on strengthening her resolve and making preparations for her escape. One morning, as she organized old photographs, Amara stumbled upon a picture of her parents. Their faces, radiant with love, stirred bittersweet memories. Her mother had always been her pillar of strength, teaching her the value of resilience and self-worth. But Amara wondered what her mother would think if she knew about her marriage. Would she be disappointed or heartbroken? The photograph reignited a sense of connection to her roots. Amara began to recall the stories her mother used to tell her about women in their family who had overcome great odds. Those tales became a source of inspiration, reminding her that she carried the legacy of strong, courageous women within her. As the evening approached, Chaik returned home in a particularly sour mood. Amara braced herself, careful not to provoke him. Yet, despite her efforts, he lashed out verbally, his words cutting deeper than any physical blow. But this time, instead of shrinking under his fury, Amara found herself standing taller. The echoes of her past had reminded her of her worth, and she resolved not to let his cruelty define her. That night, as she clutched the photograph of her parents, Amara whispered a vow to herself. She would not let Chaik's actions break her spirit. The strength of her ancestors coursed through her veins, and she was determined to honor their resilience by reclaiming her life and her freedom. The morning air was crisp and cool as Amara stepped out into the garden. The hibiscus flowers she tended daily had blossomed, their vibrant petals a small testament to her care and resilience. She stared at them for a moment, drawing strength from their beauty. Today, she decided, would mark the beginning of her freedom. Amara reviewed her escape plan, refining every detail in her mind. Nkechi's words echoed in her heart. You don't have to face this alone. With the phone number to the women's shelter still hidden in her book, Amara rehearsed the conversation she would have with them. She needed to be ready for anything. At the market, Amara discreetly purchased a burner phone with some of the money she had saved. The vendor, a kind older woman, gave her a knowing look but said nothing. Back at home, Amara hid the phone carefully, checking her surroundings.